Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Division of Agriculture Facebook Live. My name is Erik Johnson. I am a natural resource specialist and land management. I'm here with Damon Hampel from Division of Mining, Land, and Water, and we're here today to talk about the Nenana-Totchaket Agriculture Land Project, the next biggest ag project in Alaska. So we're going to go over where we are in the process, or I guess Damon's going to explain the overall process of how land moves to a sale, and we are going to have time at the end for questions. So as he's talking or I'm talking, please come with questions. We can answer those at the end. Go ahead, Damon, and tell us about the process.
Okay, all right, thanks, Erik. Yeah, so my name is Damon Hampel, and like Mo said, or Erik said, that I am with Division of Mining, Land, and Water. I'm in the land conveyance section on the project development team. So I'm a natural resource specialist with the state of Alaska, and basically the project development team identifies possible projects. We kind of get those projects out, and we do all the steps necessary to eventually get them to public offering for disposal for purchase. And I'm going to go over real quick just the very general, very brief kind of process, because there is a process involved. It's a lot of it is bound legally, but it's also some steps that we take to ensure that everything's done right and correctly and make it as smooth as possible. And just a caveat too, everyone needs to understand that this is not a fast process. It normally takes a couple years to have a project from inception all the way through to offering. The Nenana-Totchaket agriculture project, we're trying to streamline it and kind of get it out as fast as we possibly can, but understand there's still things that need to be done. And as most things in Alaska, we can't really do anything out in the field till about early as possible, April or May, and then it kind of winds up around September, October. So the first step that kind of goes into project development or in state land sales of any kind is a planning process. The planning process is done well before any project kind of even gets thought about. So for across the state of Alaska on state lands, a lot of them are in area plans. Those area plans are developed through through RADS, which is the Resource Assessment and Development section, and they look at land, identify it, they put it in an area, they have management intents on them, constraints, all kinds of different things. Lands are classified as, for example, settlement or agriculture or forestry or retained for wildlife habitat. There's lots of different classifications. After all the planning is done, those lands are kind of classified and designated. Then the research kind of comes into play, and that's kind of where the project development team, so someone like myself, kind of comes in, and we'll get a lot of different feedback. So some of that feedback is from different divisions like ag, or public comment that they can nominate some land that they find that's state land, or we just look at like what would be in the best interest of the state and the best interest of the citizens of the state to look at those area plans and see that there is possibility of projects that we could start for conveyance or for disposal into the hands of the public through sale. And so the research goes into history, the management, legality, property. There's all kinds of facets going in with the research. So once the research is complete, it goes into a preliminary decision. And in conjunction with the preliminary decision and research, it does go out to a division agency review. So once a project kind of gets packaged up, and it goes out to multiple divisions, multiple agencies, they make comment on it, kind of tweak it or give ideas, and then it goes into the preliminary decision. It's quite a write-up, and it goes into, it's very in-depth. It's a lot of different things with the research, the management constraints, concerns that come up, fish and wildlife concerns, soil concerns, what our intent is, whether it's settlement or agriculture or recreational cabins. A lot of things go into it. during this preliminary decision is, in conjunction with it, is kind of the next step, and that's the public notice and comment. And actually, right now is the open comment period for the Nenana-Totchaket agriculture project, and it ends May 26th at 5 o'clock. And we take any comments from anyone, we take those into consideration. However, only written comments are the ones that can go into, I shouldn't say can go into, because we do take them all into consideration, but the written comments are the ones that have the ability to appeal. You do get notices of the preliminary decision and final decision. So there's a lot of different things that goes into the written comments, but also that's the legal way to make an official comment. So during the public notice and comment period, we start accepting and compiling all the different comments. And then once the public comment period ends, then we go into the final finding. And the final finding takes the preliminary decision, and it takes the comments that come in. We take them into consideration. And if there are things that we possibly overlooked in our research, or new things that came about that wasn't known at the time, or just enough comment come in from the public that, like, maybe you should really think about this because, different things in the area, things that might change. And so we will take those official written comments into consideration, and if we need to amend the decision, or if we need to rewrite it, or if we need to just go forward with no changes, then that's what we do, and we take those comments into consideration very carefully when we do that. After the final finding does get issued, then it goes into the final step, which is development, appraisal, and offering. And it sounds like that would be pretty simple, but once again, the development is the kind of design, and the design is based off of what the intent is, the best management practices, the constraints on the land, whether it's topography or soils or roads or access, a lot of different things. Then the surveys go out there, and the surveying does take time, just like anything, and especially for a project this size, there's a lot of surveying that will need to be done. And then it goes to appraisal for fair market value, and then eventually into an offering. And right now, the offering for the Nenana-Totchaket, we don't know when it is, but when it does, it'll be open for everyone, not just Alaska residents, because it is an agriculture project. And it will go for a sealed bid, just like most of our other land sale projects. And then after a certain time, it closes, and then it could possibly be open for over-the-counter sales. But that's many, many, many moons down the road. So that's just a real quick, dirty kind of synopsis on how the land sales process is kind of laid out and how it goes in the state of Alaska. So.
Excellent. And Damon and I, last week, were in Fairbanks, and we had a public meeting, which if they wanted to see that public meeting, is that available for them to view through your website?
No, so the public meetings so we have had two public meetings. One was in Fairbanks, and then the next night, one was in Nenana. The one that was in Fairbanks was recorded on Microsoft Teams, because it was a live digital presentation as well as a personal meeting. That gets recorded for the project file for legality that kind of demonstrates that we do or did have the meeting, and plus we can capture those comments and kind of how it went. Also, it's by having that recording, it goes into the project file. It can be viewed, it's just not open for public viewing, like
Thank you for your
go to a
clarification.
website.
Sorry, the public, I did not know the exact process. But again, you can make comments at any time directly to Damon or through the website process.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so since it's written comments only, they can be done through fax, through email, or through traditional letter mail. So.
Excellent. And should we talk about a couple of some of the main themes that I think we can definitely address was trails and access. And we are certainly not trying to put trails across farm parcels that we're going to offer in the future. I believe our plan is to align the parcels to where the trails are. So if you happen to be a user of that area, please let us know where those trails are, because we don't want future farmers to have additional issues that they have to mitigate. We'd like to take care of that now.
Right, yeah, and when we design and during the design process for survey and before it goes out for offering, that's all taken in consideration to where if trails are identified, and even the ones we have currently identified, those access, I wouldn't say issues, but the access considerations are priority, and like what you said, then the parcels get built to the access, not vice versa, where the parcels are there and then we try to figure out access.
Right.
So,
Excellent, yeah. I just know that that was a concern that I just wanted to highlight. We understand, and we are trying to incorporate that into the project design. A little bit about the agricultural nature of the area. We have some preliminary soil data that was done by the Natural Resource Conservation Service, but it was done on a fairly coarse level. There were identified, the whole project area is 140,000 acres, and I think 100,000 acres were considered land capability class 4, which has some limitations for agriculture, but generally most soils in Alaska are class 3 or 4 anyway, so Alaskans are used to those further management things you have to do to get the land to be functional and useful for agricultural development purposes. We are having the Natural Resource Conservation Service this summer do some additional, much more detailed soil survey on the front 33,000 acres that we're calling the phase 1, which is what is under public comment right now. The other portions of the project area, the other 90,000 acres, we will deal with those in future decisions. We're still hoping to learn more about the project area before we make any decisions on those more remote areas. And again, they are collecting that data this summer. Last summer, we had some really good LIDAR, which is kind of like LADAR for determining topography, but it also captures things like first returns, second returns, and third returns, and those second or third returns are vegetation. So we'll know roughly, if there's, large trees or small trees. This area happened to have been burnt in 2009. I think it was called the South Minto Fire.
Minto Flats South
Minto
wildfire.
Flats. Yep. So there has been some extensive burning across the area, which I think will make it easier to develop, but we're still trying to figure out if there are a lot of standing trees, what areas those are, and possibly doing timber sales or some kind of salvage before we offer them to farmers.
Yeah, and so the preliminary survey and what we've experienced from being out in the field is that you can speak more of the limitations of the soil, but generally speaking, this is a very old, ancient kind of sand dune type area, like very broad area, and as such, there are pockets that are poorly drained, but majority of it is either well drained or overly well drained because of the sand issues. So, or I guess not sand issues, but like it's just something to take into consideration that a lot of times when we talk about soils and agriculture and we have that kind of mindset and we see the classifications of soils, we kind of assume that they might be swampy or too wet, when in fact they're not. They could be the opposite. So.
Yep. And even if they are less well-drained or less suitable soils according to the land capability class, they can certainly be, through management, improved to be able to plant crops into them, or another common use is to pasture livestock, some kind of grazing or browsing of livestock. Those are also definitely agriculture, and we are definitely looking at the livestock industry as potential customers for land sales in the future for this area.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of agriculture capable soils and just agriculture projects in general, one of the things that we came across during research for this area, and when I mean this area, I mean the project area, but also the area of Nenana in general, the widespread area, is that it actually is frost-free for almost an entire month longer than over in Delta, and the topography, the weather, the shadow effect, there's lots of different things that make this possibly or have the ability to be as good or better than agricultural resource than the Delta area.
Yeah, I've read some of the reports from the 1980s, I think it was 82 specifically, that said that Nenana-Totchaket was certainly in consideration when they were doing Delta Junction. It just didn't have the access. But then what I read was it had 10 more frost-free days because of the lower elevation at several hundred feet lower than Delta Junction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then not being near any, not being too close to any mountain range that is significance can alter weather and things like that as well. So, yes. And speaking of the access, you know, one of the reasons why this project is kind of now really building up a lot of steam and there's a lot of excitement about it. When I mentioned the planning process before, ever since the 70s and then through 2 different management plans, or excuse me, area plans, this area has been classified as agriculture because of the capabilities, the soil, lots of different things. The reason no projects were ever even developed beyond kind of the research phase was access issues, because you do have to cross the Nenana River. Well, all that changed about 1.5 years ago when the bridge officially got put in and officially opened, and now there's road access to the project area and into this general area. And within the project area, once you get in there, there's actually some pretty decent trails, and there's also some offshoot roads from that go to drill pads that were put in there from exploration from Doyon, so a few years ago. So there are already some constructed access, and well, like we mentioned before, when we do our design and implementation, we're going to use that access as the existing way to get into parcels that we offer.
To be clear, that bridge was only opened July of last year, so it hasn't even been 10 months since we got access, and we are just moving forward. For government, this is light speed, but you know, everybody is focused on moving this forward and helping build Alaska agriculture. Will the links be presented for public comment, or would you like to verbally give them? Or
you know, we can. I don't know how to put the links up for.
We'll put them in the comments on
Yes.
the page for later, so make sure you check those. But again, we want to hear your ideas. I believe, what are the outlined parcel sizes in the decision?
We don't know yet.
Oh, the preliminary decision, I thought it
Generally,
mentioned.
20 and larger, 20 to 640.
So if you have any ideas beyond 640 or less than 20, it would be appropriate to make those comments. Just to be clear, we are still open to changes. We are open to new ideas. I think back in 1980, John Coghill said the Nenana-Totchaket is not built in stone, it's built in jello. So we are certainly up for changing, and it has changed several times in the decades. But I think, is a very well thought out plan moving forward. But again, we can make the best well thought out plan better by having comments from you.
Right, and the general area is very large. This phase 1 project area is large when you consider that it's roughly a township and a half, so an enormous amount of acreage and size. So even though it's considered, or not considered, even though it is phase 1 of the overall area, within phase 1 there will be multiple offerings. So what we're proposing right now with this particular preliminary decision and public notice that's out right now would be an initial offering. Anything subsequent past phase 1 would go through this whole process again. So this initial offering is something that we are proposing that can be done within the next year or so, because like I said, the constraints on just the size, the fiscal responsibility of getting the surveyors out there, time constraints, things like that. So we are going to focus on a mix of parcel sizes near already developed access so that we can really get this project put out there and available for purchase. So in the comments later on, when we put the links up to more information on this project, they'll go to the land sales page, and on that land sales page, you can actually see the public, not public comments, but the parts of it that will have links to PDFs of maps of the preliminary decision itself, of lots of different things, how to make public comments, lots of different information that we're going to put links up for. And while you're there, you can actually look at some of the other projects, whether they're agriculture or settlement projects that are currently available and that are in comment period as well.
Excellent. Do we have any comments on Facebook that we can talk to, John? Or address?
Yeah, we sure do. And also, for those listening, we can post all those links in the comments below and also in the description of this video, so you guys can access them that way. But we got a few questions. The first one is from Laura. Do you think there would be a limit on how many parcels someone wanted to buy? For instance, if blocks were 20 acres, then a person could buy 5 or 10 blocks to make a larger parcel.
So the answer is yes. However, each one of those parcels would be subject to agriculture covenances, and Mo can actually, or Erik, sorry.
No.
Yeah.
So my name is Erik Johnson. People who know me generally call me Mo, so that's totally fine.
And so Erik can speak more about those covenances, but each parcel would have its own set of things. So even though you have the ability to,
Bid on multiple parcels.
Bid on multiple parcels, yeah. No guarantee you'll get them, but you're able to bid on them. And let's say you do get 5 20-acre parcels, hypothetically. You have 100 acres. That doesn't necessarily mean that those 100 acres are all equal. So.
Right, and each parcel would have its own plan, its own development plan regarding infrastructure and other developments within it. But yes, and we we're offering it in phased. So if you're looking for 100 acres, you certainly could put 5 bids on smaller parcels, but we are hoping to have larger parcels available too. And then previously, Delta Junction to Point McKenzie, there was a 6-year period where all the land was offered. And if you weren't here for those 6 years, you had to buy from the secondary private market when the original owner wanted to resell it for some reason. We are planning this where we're going to have a steady flow of land offerings for the next 20 or 30 years, where if you didn't happen to get a high bid this year, analyze your bid, look at the other bids, but you'll know that next year or the year after that, generally in the same area, there will likely be similar parcels for sale again. Although each parcel is certainly different as far as slopes, aspect, and what soils are present.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's just that I like that kind of steady flow of offerings. And like I said, phase 1 is once it goes through the final decision and approval, we're going to do multiple offerings within phase 1, which means that what was decided in the final finding will hold true for the entire phase 1 project. However, there's nothing that says that we have to offer the entire project all at once. So if we do that, continually offering, multiple parcels for the next couple of years in like initial offering, or maybe Nenana-Totchaket agriculture phase 1, secondary offering, things like that. But once we go beyond the phase 1 and beyond the footprint of what we're proposing, then we would have to do the process of research and decision and public notice all over again. So right now though, we're if this proposal gets approved and goes through, which we're really hoping it will, and a lot of that is up to what we put out there, but a lot of it is actually, I wouldn't say dependent, but it can be influenced by public comment. But we're sitting on a hypothetical bank of land offerings for the next probably 10 or 15 years of this initial phase 1. So.
Excellent question. Do we have another one?
We do. We've got one more, and that is simply, what is the power access on this project?
There is no power on the project side of the Nenana River. We are certainly looking at several potential options of getting power out there. And nothing is solid yet, but we are definitely taking that into consideration.
Right, and that was actually something that was brought up during the public meeting in Nenana, and we actually got a mix of responses and comments on that, where some people said that they didn't know how they could do agriculture without power, and other people that have been doing it and have a history of farming practices, we don't need power at all. So it's really dependent on what you value as what you think you could get out of an agriculture project, whether it's just for yourself or for resale or consumption of the masses and putting it out there. And once again, there's different requirements of whether it's row crops or cattle or greenhouse, hoop houses. There's lots of different things that can fall under the umbrella of what's considered agriculture.
Yes. No more questions from the audience? Alrighty. Well, I think that is probably, we're going to wrap up here. We thank everybody for tuning in. We want your comments or further questions. Those can be sent via email as well. And please join us again next week for a Division of Agriculture Facebook Live.